So let's talk a little bit more about setting. What does setting do? In my memoir, Lucerne, the place where I grew up, is more than just a place. It's the location where my parents met, where my mother felt trapped, where my grandfather kept the memories of my father alive. It was also where I grew up and where I felt loved. The location informed my mother's desperation, but on the other hand, it's a place that I keep returning to, a place I feel very comfortable and where I feel close to my grandparents. The Lucerne house in my memoir and Lucerne, the ghost town, is as much a character as any other character in my memoir. Here's a little excerpt. Now, this is comes after a section where I describe what remains of the Lucerne town site. The description shows both the isolation as well as some scenes from when I was a kid. And then it meanders through my mother's my mother's relationship to the town site and its isolation. So here's an excerpt. Lucerne was a quiet spot even then. There were no jobs unless you worked for the railway, the park, or the Department of Highways. Nothing for a young woman with limited skills and a grade 8 education. There had been a one-room school. For a few scattered years, it served the children of Lucerne's railroad families. I saw a photo of the old schoolhouse once, a small square clapboard building, a young woman with a confusion of children at her feet. In that spot now stands a field of aspen saplings. In late summer, the green is punctuated by soft pink rose petals and royal purple monkshood, a remnant of the schoolhouse. And in the spring, the elk go there to graze. They feast on fresh dandelions and leaf buds, stopping occasionally to rub their soft velvet on the infant trees and leaving behind wisps of fur caught in the wild rose thorns. By the time Mary was a teenager, the school was gone. If you wanted to go to school, you were driven to Redpass, where when you outgrew Redpass, you learned through correspondence. There were no phone lines, there was no electricity, and no running water. For Mary, it felt like a prison. So there are a number of locations within my memoir that are quite important, but none as important as the Lucerne house. So as I mentioned earlier, Moving Water Tucson couldn't have taken place in most locations. It needed to be where it was. I would say the same, well, maybe to a lesser degree, but to at least some degree, Archipelago is the same. In Archipelago, the Caribbean is alive with color and excitement. New York, by contrast, is asphalt gray. Yet the writer is able to bring the vibrancy of her childhood home to New York with her. So setting often will drive the actions of the characters. And in both of these pieces, we see that. In Moving Water Tucson, the kids are all excited by the rain, and the one child becomes too brave and gets swept away. So the actions and events in Moving Water Tucson are integrally linked to location. And the same goes for Archipelago. This is a childhood home where this writer felt really connected to the place. And then she moves away. She goes to a very different place. And there's that tension. She wants what she doesn't have anymore. So in her mind, she brings it with her. Without setting, a scene can feel ungrounded, as though you, the reader, are floating in a void. And I read pieces like this. And I think what happens is the writer is so comfortable with the setting that they sort of just, they're imagining it in their mind and they're thinking of it, so they don't bother transmitting that to the reader. I wouldn't say it happens a lot on pieces that are published, but it certainly happens in the draft process, and I've seen it in a lot of student work. So just be aware of that. Sometimes the setting is less important. Sometimes the setting is integral to what's going on, and you just know where it is, or it just comes up so naturally that you don't think you have to make an effort of it. But a lot of times we have to make sure that we're leaving these little breadcrumbs so that our reader feels grounded, they feel like they can imagine the scene, they feel like they're a part of it. And so we have to add in those details. How does setting help to create meaning? Well, in my memoir, Lucerne, the house, is the setting for many complex feelings and themes. So for my mother, it represented isolation and the need to escape, the need for freedom. For me, it's represented family and a feeling of comfort. In the two pieces that you read for this class, theme and setting are really tightly tied together. This line comes to mind, wanting to carry all green memories with me. This is from Archipelago. This really represents theme, this longing for this place and bringing this place to the next place. The whole desert might come apart at once. That's another one that's really representative of theme. This line really represents that moving into chaos, that moment when everything changes and nothing is the same ever again. So that tie-in between location and theme.